Kylie from Cantrips Media. Today we're going over Session Zero. What is it and what should you include in it? Let's dive in. So what is Session Zero? Essentially, this is a pre-campaign session that allows the DM and the players to come together and discuss important topics that may or may not relate to Dungeons & Dragons. In particular, you're going to discuss things like campaign setting and rules and expectations of both the players and the DM at the table. Session Zero is a very important tool in the DM's toolbox because it allows you to get a full understanding of what your players expect before you even get to the table when any issues arise. So the goal for Session Zero should be to get all the players and the DM on the same page. What should you cover in Session Zero? Well, I've narrowed it down to a few topics. You have player introductions, table rules and expectations, campaign setting and world building, and character creation. For each of these topics, I've included a list of general topics that you should bring up at your table. This video goes over a lot, so I've also compiled all of this into a short document that I've included on my Ko-fi link, which will be in the description down below. It's completely free to download. I'm going to include all of these important topic questions as well as a couple questionnaires that you can hand out to your players on the day of Session Zero. I found handing out a questionnaire was a lot more simple and it allowed players to answer more honestly without the pressure of anybody else listening. So the first topic is player introductions. Now this might not be as necessary if you are playing with a very tight-knit group of friends. However, if you're playing with some newbies or if you just want to make sure everybody's on the same page, it might be a good idea to run through this little exercise. In particular, you want to have each player describe their experience with Dungeons & Dragons and also let the players get to know each other a little bit better. This is also a great opportunity to gather your players' expectations for the game. In particular, you might want to ask them what their experience is, if any, and get a general idea of what aspect of D&D they're looking forward to the most. Is it combat? Is it role-playing? Is it story and world building? What interests your players and what is bringing them to the table? Could be as simple as, I've never played D&D before, I want to try it. That's perfectly okay, but this gives you an idea as a DM what to hand out to your players. If a lot of your players are combat focused, you might have a few more encounters in your campaign. Another question you'll want to ask is, do they have any goals for the game? Maybe their goal is to play kick-ass monk. Great, help provide that experience for them. Or maybe they have other goals, just to try it, or they don't really have any yet. Get a feeling for what your players are interested in. You might also want to ask your players if there's anything they are uncomfortable with when it comes to D&D. Maybe they're uncomfortable role-playing, but does that mean they don't want to try role-playing? Or does that mean you can help them role-play? I've included a player questionnaire in the downloadable link that is completely free. I'm not even asking for emails or anything. Next, you're gonna want to talk about table rules and expectations. This covers a variety of topics, and these are better left for table discussions, less a questionnaire. I've included these all in the Session Zero packet, so if you take that packet to Session Zero, you'll be able to go through these together as a group and discuss them. But I'm just going to very quickly run through some of these. Is alcohol or drugs of any sort allowed at the table? For some, alcohol might help loosen the tongue and let them be more comfortable role-playing, but just remember that overindulgence can result in an extreme form of that, making it awkward for other people at the table. Are cell phones or digital devices allowed at the table? Now there are resources now that are all completely online, so I'm thinking D&D Beyond, but there's other ones out there, so you might not be able to ban this per se, but you could suggest limiting cell phone use at the table. Maybe don't accept calls at the table, or texting and things like that might be limited, or maybe that doesn't bother you. Are real world topics allowed at the table? So I'm thinking in particular politics and religion, but you might have other ideas. These sometimes can cause conflict amongst friends at just a regular social gathering. D&D is no exception. It is a social game. So do you want to allow politics at your table, or should we save that for social media forums? Along the same lines, how do your players feel about slavery, rape, sexual assault, abuse, attraction, and sexual orientation? So is it okay if this is something that's in someone's backstory but isn't really touched on while playing D&D? That's one way to do it. There's also the idea of an X card, which I only recently heard about but am going to try and implement in the future. I'll leave a link to the person who created it down there. I already forgot his name, even though I looked it up right before filming this video. But I'll include a link to what an X card is, but essentially you provide an index card on the table, and at any point that a player is feeling uncomfortable, or even the DM is feeling uncomfortable, they can just touch the X and no questions asked, the topic is supposed to change. From what I understand, in most situations when employing the X card system, many people just feel more open to keep talking and get more into their character than they would otherwise. What does scheduling look like? How often are you guys going to meet? What happens when somebody doesn't show up? What happens if more than half the party isn't there? While in an ideal world we would just be able to play D&D every day or every week, it's not feasible for most people, so aim for once a month or twice a month. Are dice rolls allowed to be made by the players without prompting? So if a player rolls a natural 20 but doesn't tell the DM what it's for, do you count it, or are you going to make them re-roll? That's something that's important to kind of set the standard for at the beginning so that nobody has any confusion later on. Are you using minis, or are you using theater of the mind? Both offer pros and cons. But if you're doing minis, do they have to provide a mini, or are you going to do something like little paper minis that I've shown in a past video? Is food allowed? And if so, who brings the snacks? Are you doing it in a rotation? Are you all going to pitch in and order pizza every time? Is it the DM's job to provide snacks? It shouldn't be, because they have a lot on their plate already. How long are your sessions? And how many breaks are you going to take? I find personally that I do better as a DM if my sessions are about 3 hours long and we take a break in the middle. Any longer than that and I cannot focus. So splitting it in the middle gives me an opportunity to get a snack and a break and think. Might also want to consider when the cutoff time is. If you don't care how long your sessions are, they might go on until midnight. Do you cut it off there, or do you keep going? Are kids and pets allowed? Now obviously, if you're in a household that has 2 cats like me, they're going to be there regardless. If someone has kids, they might not be able to find a babysitter every month for that. So are they allowed to hang out at your house while the game is going on, or can they even join in? And as for pets, if someone's away from their dog for a long time, can they bring their dog with them to the DM's house? What level of metagaming is okay? So some people are really against metagaming. I find it really hard not to metagame at least a little bit. In general, I tend to ask as a DM, does your character know that? If you can provide a good reason that your character would know that, then sure, they know it. If not, let's roll for it and see what happens. Does the DM give out inspiration? I absolutely love this feature of D&D. It's a great way to reward your players for good decisions or creative decisions, and also guide them in the right direction if you use it properly. More often than not, I like to use it when people are creative or do something that's on brand for their character, because that means they're really putting effort into role-playing and into the game. And that means that they're enjoying the game, and it's a reward to me when they're enjoying the game, so I reward you with inspiration. But this might be too much for you to keep track of, and if that's the case, maybe ditch it, especially if this is your first time DMing, but I highly recommend. With the pesky rules out of the way, let's talk about campaign setting and world building. Session Zero is the prime opportunity to give a rundown to your players of exactly what to expect out of the world and the setting. So some things to cover in this section would be what races and classes are allowed. Are you implementing any homebrew mods? Is this a campaign or is it going to be episodic? For instance, I have one friend who wants to do a series of 20 sessions with each session being one level, but that would be along the lines of episodic. Along the same lines, how long do you predict a campaign running? Is this a multi-year campaign or is it a short 12 session run? Is magic prevalent or is it scarce? Are they going to find lots of magical items or only a few magical items? What town is the party starting in? Do they know anything about it? What's the government there? How are the politics? Is it a heavily populated town or a small town? If possible, can you share with them a world map? This will allow them to choose a place for their background. You don't have to explain everything in those particular places, but they could research it on their own if it's a module, or you can provide that information to them at a later date if they are wondering. You should also go over any major events like any wars or historical knowledge that everybody just knows. Don't fret if you don't go over all of these fine details in session 0. You'll have plenty of time in the future to have people roll a history check to see what they know, or to go over it individually with each player. You might also want to provide a summary of the upcoming story. Obviously without any spoilers, but maybe a brief introduction would help them create their character and give them a reason to be on this journey. Finally, it's the part that all of your players have been waiting for. It's character creation. You should definitely have all of your players together to create characters at one time. This doesn't apply if you're doing like a one-shot or something of that nature, but if you're trying to do a multi-session campaign, you're going to want to make sure your party is balanced. Now to do that, it's better to have everybody all together so you can bounce ideas off each other and discuss who's going to be the cleric, who's going to be the paladin, do you even need both of those things? Some other details you're going to want to go over with your players are: what's the starting level? Starting at level 1 can be a drag sometimes if you're an experienced D&D player, but if you start at a really high level like 10, that might be overwhelming for a newbie. So make sure you weigh your options as well as consult the module you're using, as sometimes they say what level they think you should be starting at. How will characters level? Will they be leveling based off of experience? And if so, who's tracking that experience? Or are they going to be leveling after certain milestones? Leveling via milestones is way easier if you ask me. Talk about their backgrounds and their hooks. Modules will actually provide player backgrounds and player hooks specific to that campaign. However, there are also some basic backgrounds in the player's handbook that people can use or recycle. You want to make sure that at least some of your players pick a hook to the campaign arc that really helps push them and drive them towards the story. Next, you're going to want to talk about feats. Are there any feats that aren't allowed? Are you allowing them to take feats at all? Should they run them by you first? Finally, you want to go over character goals and backstory. And I think this is the most important part. Now, I don't think background and backstory are the same. The backgrounds that they provide in the book also give a lot of different abilities and proficiencies and things like that. I don't really care about that when I'm talking about backstory. Backstory is your origin story, your character's reason for adventuring. And while some of that might overlap with your background, I want players to create their own story because I feel like that gets them more involved in their character, it helps them roleplay their character, and it helps get them more into the spirit of D&D if they have already come up with something on their own and presented it to me. Now I might tweak things in their backstory or add my own bits and pieces to it. If you have them create something from scratch, they're going to be more invested in it and they're going to want to see something happen with that. You also want to have your players make character goals. For instance, if your player has a warlock, they want to be rid of the contract that they're held under. This stuff might also be something that your player wants to discuss with you in secret. Maybe they don't want everyone to know that they were a part of the cult that they're assailing right now. And it also offers a unique dynamic. I feel like having a little bit of a secret and dropping it into specific parts of the story as you progress makes it a little bit more interesting and builds a different dynamic. As an example, my husband's character is a very secretive bard. I had two of my players ask what was up with him because he's a very interesting and different character. And I know his backstory and I know all of the little nitty-gritty behind the scenes. They don't, so they keep pressuring me to spill the beans on that one. Now you can play. Well, sort of. While it might be tempting to go straight into playing after you create all your characters, all in Session Zero, I actually recommend taking the time away, taking all of this information and reviewing it so that the DM can adjust the module or the sessions coming up to match the players a little bit better. Because that's the thing. This is a game that you want all of your players to enjoy and the DM to enjoy. Session Zero is a means to meet that end. Like I said before, I've included a free Session Zero packet that I'm putting on my Ko-fi. It's Ko-fi, by the way, not coffee. I've put a free Session Zero packet on my Ko-fi link for you guys to download that has all of these topic suggestions as well as 2 questionnaires, one for your players and one about your players' characters. I'd also love it if you guys let me know what you think about that, whether you leave it down here in the comments below or you leave it somewhere else. If this is something that you find helpful, I might include it with another product idea that I have for Cantrips Media, so any feedback would be greatly appreciated. Also, it is 100% free. I'm not even asking for an email or anything of that nature. I could, but I'm not going to. But if you're on my Ko-fi page and you want to donate $1 for it, I'm not complaining. But if you don't want to, I don't care. I feel like this is just something I wanted to share with everybody. If you liked this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for more videos like this and for player tips and other things related to D&D. And also hit that like button because that helps me. We're also really close to 100 subscribers. It's going to take me forever, I think. As you guys may or may not know, you need 1,000 subscribers to be monetized, plus a couple other things that are required before they monetize you. But even just changing the link so it's not a bunch of weird letters at the end would be fabulous to me. So we're almost to 100. If I hit 100, we get to change the link finally, and it'll be the best day ever. So like this video and subscribe to this video for more content like this on D&D Nerdery, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye! I'm in a new chair. Well, it's not new. It's new to you guys, but I've had this chair for a couple years. I rearranged the workshop, and it's so much nicer now. And I thought this would be much nicer to look at than that weird table situation I had going for order packing. So yeah, here we are. But get it you see my Minecraft blanket? It's not D&D related at all. You provide it's actually my cat's blanket. He likes to lay on it.